Oculus Rift in a virtual reality. It's kicking off. So anyway, yes, it's time now. It's got to that time. Dave, are you ready to do it? Yeah. Now, let me introduce Dave a bit. For those who weren't here in June, many of you I know were here for part one. It's a really big case. I'm going to go over it more in a minute, and we'll discuss it in depth. But basically, it's a big contact case I've been looking into since last summer, pretty much. And I've chatted many hours with Dave about his experiences. Now, in part one, we went over his childhood experiences going up to about the age of sort of 22, something like that. Tonight, we're going to cover with you 22 up to the present day, basically, his adult experiences, which I think, then, would agree, are kind of sort of more clear in your mind, would you say?
Yeah, because I experienced them as an adult, I remember them as an adult.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So don't worry if you missed out on part one. We are going to give a bit of an overview as well. I don't know if you know that, mate. Did you check? Yeah, we're going to do a bit of an overview, kind of like, just for the people who weren't here for part one, just 5 minutes or whatever. Just a brief overview of that. And then we're going to kick off going through the later experiences. It's an absolutely stunning case, and it gives me a real great honour to welcome Dave back here to talk. And also his absolutely superb band, Cosmosis. Those of you here for part one will have heard him play some tracks. They're back again with a new bass player. Grant, give it a wave. There he is, that's Grant, the bass player. So he's here and all for the first time. And they're going to be playing some amazing new tracks later on. I'm sure they'll tell you more about how things are going with the band as the evening progresses. Jay, do you want to come on up here and we'll do this?
Say as well, that's like an old demo that we made last year. That's not old. We sound better than that now.
Yeah, I'm just preparing them. Old Cosmosis, and then they're going to hear new Cosmosis in a bit. There we go. Let's do that. Right, let me see this. Yeah, that's all working very good. Nice. Yes, good evening everybody. I am Dave Hodrien, the chairman of BUFOG. If you don't know me, I'm sure most of you probably know me by now, probably. And I'm welcoming here today for the second time David Hunt. David lives down in Bicester in Oxfordshire, as do the rest of his band. And he's experienced contacts for most of his life. And he got in touch with me, just a brief background. I know some of you know this already if you're here for part one. Basically, he got in touch with me last summer after seeing my talk from 2013, was it? Yeah, UFO Truth Talk. I gave him contacts at the UFO Truth Magazine conference in Holmfirth, and he watched a video of that online and decided to get in touch with me about his experiences. And I drove down there, and we basically visited a number of different sites where things have taken place. I've been down there several more times now to see gigs with the band and just continue to chat about experiences. It's an absolutely incredible and really in-depth case, as I'm sure you'll find out, and some of you are probably already aware of. It's really affected me greatly as a contact researcher. It's one of the most, for me, one of the most impressive and sort of far-reaching cases I've looked into. And I've spoken with Dave for so many hours now. I've got absolutely no doubt whatsoever that he has experienced these things, him and his friends and family. And they're really incredible, and you're going to hear about some of those experiences tonight. As I said, it's not part one, it's part two. So we're going to go over his experiences. To kick things off, I'm going to hand over the mic to Dave, and if you're okay, we're going for 5 minutes or so about the early stuff. Just basically for those who weren't here in part one, would you be able to go over briefly kind of the sorts of things? Yeah. Just sure. Yeah.
Hi everyone, you're right. You might hear me, can't they? Cool. Well, the thing like what Dave says, I'm more looking forward to doing part two, to be honest with you, because it's like anything. Like, when you ask people about experiences about when they were a kid, I remember the things that happened to me as a five-year-old, and to be fair, a lot of it's fairly fuzzy. So I'm a lot more coherent on this stuff. If I was to sort of overview the experiences of childhood, really, I had quite regular contact. I used to experience soldiers coming into my bedroom at night time, that used to come through the wall. I had like black shadow beings coming into my room that were asking me to go with them. I had an abduction experience with my mum and dad when we was driving down the motorway. There's so many, Dave. Actually, it's hard to sort of really actually think about like what happened to me. It was quite regular, and it sort of consciously it died off when I was about 13. And I found out apparently that's quite common. That for some reason, because your life the way it is, and you're at secondary school and start to get full of testosterone and all the other sort of things that happen to you. The experiences seem to die off as if I was more capable of blocking it from myself, but then it kind of came back with a vengeance as I got older, and I think that's what we're sort of going into tonight, really, isn't it? And I think, to be fair, it is a lot more interesting, really, what did happen to me as an adult, because when I was a child, the other thing was that I was more unconscious about what was going on. So I believe that actually, the memories, some of them are not inaccurate as in I'm telling you them as I remember them, but I believe that my child's awareness makes them as good as inaccurate, if you know what I mean, because I think a lot of time I was seeing it through the eyes of immaturity or through the eyes of fear, and then when I got older and was able to have a more adult communion with what was going on, I changed my whole perspective about what was happening, and I think I've got a more balanced view about the experiences now, and you can tell it in the way that I'll describe them, because we're not talking about just shadow beings anymore. It was more presented to me as actual people, and now I believe that, so to be fair, I don't really, aliens and all that sort of stuff scares me, really. Right? It's like, I've always just used the word people, because as far as I'm concerned, it is people. You know what I mean? It's just some people that I'm interacting with, and they seem to, although seem to behave slightly better than us, from what I can see, they seem to be fairly similarly driven to what we are. So therefore, for all intents and purposes, they are people. So I just sort of, just want to emphasise that, really, because the whole idea of being abducted by aliens now is quite threatening, to be fair. You know what I mean? And of course, using the word aliens, for me, is a fairly negative term. You know what I mean? I wouldn't use it against someone who was just from another country, and I won't use it from someone who's from another dimension or another planet either. Do you know what I mean? If it turns out we are all one in this universe, then there is no separation, and therefore there is no aliens. But I will tell you the stories as they happen. So, okay.
Fantastic, thanks, Dave. Yeah, so you can see there, Dave has experienced many different things over the years. In part one, he did actually talk about an abduction that took place alongside his wife and his newborn daughter, and that was a kind of turning point for you with your experiences, wasn't it? That experience opened up David's mind towards what was happening through his life, really, with this, and from then on, things seemed to sort of kick off in quite a major way. Now, a lot of the experience we're going to go over. they cover a wide variety of different things, so we're not just going to be talking about sort of straight-up visitations or abductions here. As you'll see as the evening progresses, there's a wide variety of experiences we've got to go over with you. And they're all absolutely fascinating. So what we're going to start with now is this incident that happened in the summer of 2004, the Ghostfields UFO incident, and it's one of the ones I went over with Dave and Adam the first time down Bicester in great detail. So I'll hand over to Dave again to kind of go over what happened with this experience.
Okay, just before I start as well, I'm going to keep clarifying. I don't think about these things every day. Do you know what I mean? I don't wake up and think about what happened to me in 2004 every day. Do you know what I mean? I don't. So I'm not going to give you like a rehearsed kind of. It's not going to be like when I sing later where I know all my lines and everything. Do you know what I mean? It's something that happened like 10 years ago now, and I'm going to remember it the best I can. There is also an element to this which I've realised psychologically as well, that although the experiences weren't necessarily negative, I realised later on that they were traumatic, and that has a sort of, it adds to the dynamic, and I think you need to, if you're talking to other people who have had contact experiences, I would suggest like you treat them like, generally like you would treat anyone who's been through a traumatic experience. Sometimes I've seen on videos now where people look like they're crumbling because people are sort of firing questions at them and stuff, and I think, well, if that person was telling you about another traumatic experience they'd had, you wouldn't just start firing questions. You know what I mean? If someone said to you, and I don't want to talk about these things, but I'm saying that if someone said to you, I've been wrecked, you go, oh wow, right, so what colour car was it he was driving? Do you know what I mean? Like, people are going through like some sort of trauma where they're trying to share with you, and I do want to share with you what happened to me as honestly as possible, and as least traumatically as possible, if possible. Have I said possible enough times? Right, so is it possible? Is this with Ricky? Is this the one we're talking about? Yeah, coming, right, okay. Right, so this was an interesting experience. I'm not sure necessarily whether this was exactly to do with my own personal story or not. I've got a feeling this was a story about being in the right place at the right time, and being two guys that resonated to this possible reality as well, which made us make the decisions that we did when we saw the UFO. Me and my friend Ricky Meadows, which all those guys at the back know to be a real person, and fairly savoury. Oh yes, you've met him, haven't you, as well now? Right, so Dave's met him and talked to him about it. We went up to a place called Brill Hill, which is near Bicester. And we used to go up quite regularly, just like star watching. And in all fairness, a lot of times we were out there with half an eye open for UFOs and stuff. I was seeing them fairly regularly and telling him about it. He was seeing them fairly regularly, and for some reason we were getting together and sort of going out a lot to do that. But this happened on the way home from Brill Hill, and we were driving back. It's hard to do that without a map or anything, but we were going around the outside of Bicester on the what do they call it, the ring road, and there's fields like off to the right of us for farmers' fields, as far as you can see to the right. So I looked up. I was driving. I looked up to the right, and there was one of these. And I bet loads of you have seen them, haven't you? There's like a lot of white lights flying about. Has anyone seen these like white lights flying about that look like satellites, but but they're a little bit lower and. Yeah, you have. Excellent. Yeah? Okay, right, okay. Yes, but I see them all the time. But this one was lower than you usually see them. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I see them and I think, actually that could be a satellite, but sometimes you see them proper in the atmosphere and see them doing turns and they flare up and they come down and, Adam knows what I'm talking about, just to put a spotlight on someone else for 1 nanosecond. We saw this light and it was coming and it was dragging itself, like coming down. It was sort of doing it in waves like that, coming out of the sky. And I'm talking that this thing was only like, hundreds of feet in the sky. It wasn't 50,000 feet up in the sky. Well, we had UFOs in our minds anyway, because we had kind of been out and sort of like looking for stargazing and stuff. So I pulled the car over, and me and Ricky, we watched this white light come down, and it went down into the fields off to our right. But we're pretty brave guys. I said to Ricky, look, do you want to go into that field? Because you could still see the white light in the field. it was still glowing like behind the hedgerows.
Okay.
Shall I talk to you afterwards, or yeah? So we could see the light, and we looked across the road, and there was a public footpath right across the road that was like taking us into the field. So we thought, okay, right, this is fate. Let's get out of the car. We went into this field. We went to the first field, and you could see the light was parked in the field, but it was in the next field along, and there was another hedgerow in between us and the light. So, in reality, I'll tell you what we did. We stood there for 10 minutes and had a fag, because we were feeling quite brave, but we weren't quite, we weren't running towards it, you know what I mean? Yeah, we was like, okay, right, let's have a fag. And we just stood there and thought maybe it would take off again or something. That's what we'll see, and it'll be amazing just to see that. Because anything falling out of the sky is amazing, but to see it take off again, that's it wasn't a fallen satellite or something. You know what I mean? So we stood there and we had this fag, and then we were just about feeling like, okay, so let's walk over to the other side of the field, and we were just going to approach the hedgerow and like look through the hedgerow and see if we could see the UFO in there. We saw about like 10 or 12 guys walking. They came out of this hedgerow and they were walking shoulder to shoulder, right? They weren't like uniformed like in the army, they weren't all, they were just sort of spaced out, yeah? Like 2 or 3 together, and then there's a bit of space, and it was like a bit like that. They were just walking across this field. And we stopped dead, watched them, and it was like it all happened pretty quickly, it just happened quickly. Me and Ricky experienced the same thing, and I'll tell you what I experienced. There was a guy that I was looking at, and I'll explain what these guys look like properly too, because it's quite interesting, because I've never seen anything before it or since actually. They were all wearing like white suits, and have you ever seen like these bio-crop guys, and you see them like going across a field, do you know what I mean? Like, and they're all wearing the sort of white suits with the face bit cut out, yeah? That's exactly what these guys look like, right? And I could have, someone could have convinced me that's what I saw, said, oh no, what you saw was like, 10 or 12 human beings in bio suits, you shouldn't really have seen it, they were doing something dodgy in the field at night time, you know what I mean? But you shouldn't really, you're just unlucky to be there and see it or whatever. And it just so happened that there was a UFO there or whatever, hadn't there? But one of them turned round and he looked at me. And at the time he was over 100 yards away. And when he looked at me and his face, it felt like he was this far away from me. I could see every detail in his face. He was like nose to nose with me through the mask, but nevertheless, nose to, that's how it felt. It was like he was nose to nose to me, and there's no kids here, as you know, and I felt this like gut wrenching fear, and he sort of basically in my head I heard like almost like a growl, like fuck off. That's what it was. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I turned with like dread, and I felt dread before. I was in the army. I know what dread is. I felt it. I felt dread, and I turned round and I ran out of the field. And I knew that Ricky was running next to me, and we both just ran out the field. We ran through this path and over this kissing gate, to get onto the main road. We ran over the road, got in the car, started driving, didn't even look to see if the UFO was taking off or anything like that. And I asked Ricky what he saw, and he said exactly the same thing. He said, one of the guys looked at me, he said, and he was right there opposite my face, he said, and he told me to go away. Me and Ricky must have different psyches, and mine swears more than his, but he said, it told me to go away really sort of, like forcefully. He says, and I felt this terror, he said, in the pit of my gut, and I knew why we were running, and we both ran. But that's that experience basically, that's the end of that, that's what happened. We got in the car, we drove back, I dropped him off, I went home. No Steven Spielberg music played, and we got on with the lives, you know what I mean? But for days afterwards, I felt in a very strange place, because it was a very strange experience, because all the other experiences I'd had up until that point felt impersonal. It felt like there was always an element of me that was like, there's a possibility, Dave, that you are seriously crazy, you know what I mean, and you've got problems and that, it just so happens that you come across like a normal person. I mean, to speak to people, you know what I mean? But you're actually deeply imbalanced, you know what I mean? And but having that experience with Ricky, that was like one of the first times that I had to come away from that and go, okay, right, I couldn't have made that up in my head, because Ricky's happy to say that it happened too, and there's other people involved and there's some objectivity here, even though it didn't feel like it was the same people that I normally deal with. It was more like objective experience out there, if you like, do you know what I mean? And it also presented itself by being with me and my friend being there. It was really strange, right? As we just afternoon, right? As we run across the road, we got in the car, and just as we were pulling away, a police car came the other way and drove past, you know? And I remember having a really weird little thought, you know what I mean? Just thinking, look, those two coppers are driving down the road, and they, you know, because they're not going to stop us and ask us what we're doing, you know, we're just pulling away from the side of the road, they don't care. And I was thinking, they're driving down the road, and there's a spaceship there, man, in that field. And they're not going to look, they're not going to see it, they're just going to carry on with their duties and go, God, it's boring around here, man, there's nothing ever happening. And we were running away from a spaceship and aliens, you know, for want of a better word. It was, yeah, but there you go, you know, yeah, that was what happened.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, let's have a look at some of the aspects of that. So I don't want to get in the way of the projector there. Okay, yeah, so here's a couple of maps to show you. So this is the location. So here we go. We're going along Charbridge Lane, and this island is where you first spotted the object, wasn't it? So that's there where the car was at point A, and across here is where the object was. So it was in the sky, and it was kind of coming up this way along, following alongside the road. And this is where they parked the car, and that there is the trek through to the field location, and that's where they stopped for the cigarette. Across here is where the white glow was, on this other side of this big bank of trees. As a photograph I took, so I went there to go over some of the key experiences. Obviously, as this one happened in Bicester area, I was like, we've got to go down there. So this is the first place we're headed to. There's a photo I took of where they parked up. This looks a bit different now, doesn't it, David? How you used to?
That's just better now than it used to.
Really, was it even more overgrown than this? Yeah, so they've opened it up a bit now, guys. So yeah, this here was more bushes and trees around back then. There's the field again. Was that different to how you remember it?
The thing is that it was night time pretty much. You know, like when we went into the field.
Yeah.
The field, it looked the same. It had trees and grass in it. You know, we went in. You know.
Yeah, obviously, this is daylight photo of it, so obviously it was after dark, so it would look quite different. But yeah, that's the position where it stood. And across here, this is the bunch of trees where the white light was behind. We did actually try to go across on the day. I was like, let's go and have a look at the actual site where this white light may have been, but unfortunately it was so overgrown and it was really marshy, wasn't it? We went down there, there was a lot of mud around and brambles and everything, and it just wasn't going to be possible. Not that 11 years later you're likely to find anything, I didn't expect to go across there and find a sort of burnt round patch on the ground or anything like that. I mean, you never know for definite. There's a photograph there of, not a photograph, a drawing, should I say, of the white object. So yeah, it was just a white glowing light up in the starry sky. So yeah, as I said, there was a glow coming from behind the trees. So it certainly appeared that this object, I mean, it could be interpreted, was that a completely different object? But it seemed to be going to that position, didn't it? So it was coming down in the sky. Yeah, so they were pretty much watching it until it had disappeared from view. So it was pretty much that this white object was down there in the field, and whatever it was there in the field. The question is, was it a crash or was it a landing? It's very interesting that it was doing these dipping type things. That may suggest, yes, Tom?
I wasn't laughing at you, Dave. I was laughing because I had an experience very similar to yours a long time ago with a friend as a witness, and on the way home we encountered police as well who stopped us, and that's what we were doing. That's why I giggled there.
No, that's cool, man. I'm expecting people to laugh, man. It's
this is what I was
ridiculous.
going to say.
That's ridiculous, man.
This is what I wanted to say. This is what I wanted to say. How did it land? Because was it like a bob? Because when I saw when it came down, Dave, and landed, it was more like a bobbing motion as it went along the ground. Like,
This
it
was
was like
like-
it bounced. Yeah.
This was just more like swooping and then staying level and then swooping like that. It was like
Right.
all of a sudden it would do that. You know what I mean? But I never seen anything do it like it.
All I know is
before,
when this
so-
one I saw came down, Dave, it's that bob like, it's almost like it was bouncing along, but it wasn't like on the ground. It was almost like it was like using some, I don't know, like a buffering type thing.
So it's coming down. So was it crashing, or was that just the way that this particular object came into land? We never know for sure. I mean, there wasn't any explosion or any loud sound that made it look like it hit the ground in any way. But we don't know for definite really on that one.
I think there's one interesting thing, though.
Yes.
Is with some UFO cases, people do describe this kind of leaf-type motion.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
I've
that
dealt with.
sounds very much similar to that.
I have actually dealt with other cases where I've just been seen to do that. Not really coming into land, but up in the sky doing this kind of leafy kind of movement. So it may be that there's a particular type of these craft that have that sort of movement to them. We're in the realms of really advanced stuff here. So how can we pin a label on it and say, oh, it's definitely coming into crash? We don't know for definite. This here is a drawing that Dave did showing the line of beings coming out of the trees there. So that's essentially how it was interpreted at the time. This line of these humanoid beings. Why were they there? What were they doing? Why cross the field in a big row? It did seem to me that they were searching for something on the ground. Very reminiscent, really, of the Roswell crash, when the military went down there and cordoned off the area and crept along the area where the debris field was, picking up every single little bit. Were they up to something different? Were they collecting some biological material from that area of the ground and looking for something very specific? These are all unanswered questions that we're never going to know.
There's a lot of things that are interesting about this. It's the name Ghost Fields itself is
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, do you want to go over the ghost field thing, where that's come from, Dave?
Yeah, no, you're right, mate. It's like a lot of times, if you notice this, that there is a massive correlation between UFOs and ghosts and spiritual stuff,
Yeah.
And those ghosts are well known, those fields are well known for people seeing stuff down there.
Brilliant.
Do you know what I mean? So,
Because there is a correlation, there's a phenomenon called zones of strangeness.
okay, yeah.
Where there's a correlation between UFO and paranormal phenomena.
Yeah, that's totally true for me, that is true.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
so there's something, maybe something about this location
Yeah.
that might be worth going back and looking at the history of it, to see if there
Yeah.
are any reports.
Well, Bista's a really old place,
Yeah.
that's been around for about 1,000 years. It's in the Doomsday books and stuff. So and that's a Roman road that that boundary road's on. So, it's got a long history. But usually that sort of spiritual history goes back even further. You'll find that even the Saxons, everyone was saying, oh yeah, no, those fields are weird fields. It could just be an actual like a magnetic abbreviation or something like that allows people's consciousness to open up, or I don't know.
Well, yeah, no, it's completely mysterious.
I think it's also possible that this definitely, like in this case, not as applicable, but I've come to realise that I am sort of clairvoyant as well and clairaudient, and that's why I'm having like other sort of spiritual experiences. It's not just the aliens. It's like I've also seen ghosts. I've also had telepathic experiences that are not extraterrestrials talking to me. They're other beings as well. So I've realised that I'm also in myself. I don't know if the guy driving in the car behind me would have seen it. That's what frazzles my brain.
Yeah.
Well, Ricky certainly saw it, didn't he? So,
Yeah, but his brain,
Can we keep the kind of general chit chat to the end of the talk, please, guys? Because we've got a lot to get through this evening. I'm just saying that we've got to leave some time for the guys to get a proper decent music gig in. We have got packed that evening. We will do a Q&A after the talk and stuff for a few minutes. So if you can save your questions for the end, please, that'd be great. Thanks. So this telepathic vision with the being, that's a drawing that Dave did of his face up close, kind of. You said he had kind of blue-coloured skin, or appeared to.
Yeah.
But it's possible that maybe that was the visor in front that was blue and not actually his skin. We don't really know for definite because obviously it was a very fast thing that happened there. But yeah, you can see it's sort of very, very humanoid face. But the fact that he'd done that, the fact that he'd telepathically kind of appeared in front of both his and Ricky's face means that clearly they weren't human. Clearly, we're dealing with something very, very unusual with that was going on there with that incident. And then you've got this difference in what each witness heard. Now, I've dealt with other cases where very similar things have been reported, yeah. And what's going on there, or what I interpreted as, is that the being is projecting a very negative thought towards them, and their brain is interpreting it in two different ways, and that's pretty much what Dave said on that. So they heard different words, so it wasn't like it was speaking to them directly, and a lot of your experiences come through like that, don't they? They come through as feelings rather than actual audible words. So these beings do have a way of talking in different ways. But sometimes they can hold a straight up conversation, it can all be audio, and it can be like you can write down line for line. And other times it's very much a kind of sense of feelings rather than an actual physical thing you can write down on a page. And sometimes it's a mix of both of those things, really, isn't it?
Victoria as well, you can put images in.
Yes, yeah.
Like when talking to you to make, like, you know, the idea of a picture being 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just get images. And what you tell them, you know, it's hard to, like what they've showed you, it's hard to then go, oh, so what they said was this. It's hard to do that, you know, even though it's a communication. It is a communication.
I've got some words here from Ricky. It's a shame Ricky's not here today, actually, because I would have gotten to come up and say it himself. But he's not here. But I've got some testimony that I got directly off Ricky when I went down to Bicester recently. So this is basically his testimony, and you'll see here his direct words. This was out of the blue. This wasn't like prepared or anything. This is him talking about the incident to me and me writing it down. In the sky was a big glowing orb falling slowly from the sky, side to side like a leaf would fall. It looked like it was landing a couple of fields over from the road, so we decided to stop and investigate. Now we entered one field and looked around. We could see the orb was in the next field over, but the trees and bushes were too dense to make it through to it. We stood and just watched it for a while. Now I looked across this field and saw about 9 humanoid beings about 30 to 40 yards away in some kind of white suits walking across the field single line. Now one of them turned and looked at us. I felt like it was right in front of my face, and then as clear as anything I hear a voice in my head saying, "Fuck off, go away." I turned to run away back through the trees and towards the car. At the same moment, Dave did the same thing. So this is just snippets I picked here, so you can see the similarity between their testimonies. The testimonies I got from Dave and Ricky, pretty much identical. And even when you do get slight variations in testimonies with multiple witnesses, that's very, very common. And you can apply that to anything else, not just UFO sightings, like an air show or something, and you're talking about what the Red Arrows did. If you ask 20 people what the Red Arrows did, I guarantee you get slight variations in the description of what took place, if you ask them to go down to that sort of level of detail. So that's a common human thing, and that's widely known about. We can see those similarities. Right, we're now going to go over another incident that happened later that same year. This was autumn in 2004, when the guys decided to go back to the fields with a friend Marcus. So do you want to briefly go over what happened with that, Dave?
Main points of it,
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah.
as interesting, to be fair.
Well, yeah,
We had a friend called Marcus who's, reasonably sceptical. And he sort of said, let's go back to the fields, and he set up brought a telescope and all that sort of stuff, and his camera and stuff. And basically, like, not much happened all night, except that we did see an orange UFO came over, and it stopped, and it looked like an oval sort of orange disc, as if you were looking at it from the side. It stopped for a while, and then just went back the way it came. Marcus saw it. He had this strange experience that happened. Sometimes around these sort of experiences, I've read about it since in other books, and it is totally true. The idea of like an Oz factor, as if reality itself felt like as if you'd taken drugs, or you were in an altered state of consciousness, and yet you'd done nothing to stimulate it. It just kind of seemed to happen around the experience. We experienced that, and Marcus then had a panic moment where he thought he had a huge spider down his jeans, and he undid his jeans to sort of like carefully see like what this terrible monster was down his jeans, and he had a big twig in the inside of his jeans going up his jeans, and that made absolutely no sense, because like we were all with each other all night long, and I definitely didn't see him take his jeans down at any point in the night. It was all very heterosexual, and I felt like as if like for some reason that was done to him in order to confound him, in order to sort of make him question like whether he had an exact stream of consciousness. And then another thing that happened, and as this was all happening for Marcus, to be fair, we had the UFO sighting, and then Marcus took some photos of us in the field just throughout the night, and in a couple of the photos there's UFOs in the background up in the sky, and we know from the angle that we were taking the shots at, there is nothing beyond where he was taking the photos. We didn't see any lights that night where he took the photos, and there's no streets or street lamps in the distance, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I can understand that some orange lights in the distance, and it turns out there's street lamps going over a hill or something, you know, but there isn't. And Marcus captured these UFOs in the background that were sort of like, he took photos of me and Ricky, and in the background there's these orange lights again, and yet that wasn't at the time that we saw the UFO, but it made me wonder about the whole nature of the whole evening, to be fair. I don't want to go into it too much, but I had a dream, which is, again, you know, I can't prove it, but I had a dream a couple of nights later, and I basically was back at the fields with Marcus and Ricky, but I experienced a whole nother scenario about what may have happened to us in the 10 minutes. But it's a dream memory, and I'm not going to stand here to you and say, oh, that's what happened. Do you know what I mean? I had a dream. I know what a dream is, and it was a dream. But it's possible that I was dreaming about what actually did happen. And in the dream, they put a twig down Marcus's, you know, jeans. But I was aware of that when I had the dream, obviously. Do you know what I mean? So.
Thank you, Dave. Right, okay, let's have a look at this. Yeah, so here's another drawing by Dave here of the orange sort of flattened disc that they saw. So he's drawn the movement of it coming into the left there, and then sort of heading back the way it went. So it's interesting, they went down the same location and they got something else happen, you know, which for a random farmer's field alongside a road is pretty good, to be fair. You know, twice in the same year, and they get actual something going on there that can't be explained. It's very interesting indeed. There's a bit of Marcus's testimony. I met Marcus on one of my trips down Bicester to see the band do a gig. I remember seeing a brilliantly glowing yellowish light. It looked too bright to be an aircraft. It came in, stopped a while, and then headed away again. So so Marcus described it slightly differently. He described it as sort of yellowish. He said he doesn't remember it being its kind of oval shape. He remembers it just being a light. But as I said earlier on, people can interpret things in different ways. It's obvious that they witnessed something that night, and there was something there. Yeah, this branch found in jeans. Yeah, I did ask Marcus about this. Now he again, as David pointed out, he is sceptically minded, and he said that when the lights came in, he started to sort of panic, and he may have trodden on a sort of tree, or, you know, small tree or whatever, and it broke off inside his jeans.
He wasn't panicking because he'd seen a UFO.
Just to let you know, like, even though he was saying one sentence, I was panicking when the light came in, but of course. It doesn't, you know, if you say, oh, it was a UFO, then that's why you're panicking. He's like, no, it was just a light. It was just a light that I was running away from panicking. I'm a grown man with children.
Yeah, I mean, you were there next to him, and you said he wasn't really panicking, was he?
No.
You didn't notice him panicking where he could have trodden on something.
His jeans down.
No.
You know, it was up here.
I love the way you clarify that twice, that he didn't shake his jeans down.
I promise.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah, there's the orange lights in the photographs. So yeah, this is it, guys. This is one of the photographs. There's Marcus on the left, Dave there. I believe Rick was down there as well, but he's not on this particular shot. This is one of the best ones. He sent me a series of these pictures, and this is probably the kind of the most clear one. So you can see here in the background, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of orange points of light. And that's that's it zoomed in there, taking a zoom in shot of it. So it appears to be 2 things next to each other. What is that? We can't say for sure. I mean, it's possible. I mean, they said it wasn't street lights, but so it was kind of facing away from where the road was, or was there no real street lights on that? I haven't seen it after dark, that road. So.
Yeah, no, where that road was, it showed on the map.
You know, like, we were stood in that field, same field that you saw on the map earlier. So you've got the boundary road, and then it's just farmers' fields. There's a village miles away, but I stood down there night after night with Ricky and never saw those lights, you know, never saw street lights. We were there night after night at one point, you know, for hours on end, just in the dark. You know, we would have seen street lights if there were street lights there. I'm just saying that, really. That's all I can say about that.
That's very good. Thanks, Ted. Yeah, so there we go. So yeah, what are those? I mean, obviously they're not incredible to look at. We're not talking about sort of big disc there on the picture, but it's just the fact that it's captured something there on camera on the same night that they have this orange disc sighting. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, yeah, we're going to move on to this incident, which is one of the ones I discussed at Homfirth. Some of you will have heard this. Late 2004, the Nordic body scan incident with, I say Nordic, Dave tends to call them humanoids. I tend to call them Nordics. That's tradition. That's just why I've come to describe the beings. You know what I mean when I say Nordic. I'm talking about the humanoid ones, usual sort of blonde hair. One of the species that are seen the most by contactees, almost as much as greys. So anybody that tells you that Nordics have only been seen in the 60s and 70s by damp skin, all that, and that there's some sort of throwback to then, is talking absolute twaddle. Take my word for it. But let's. I'll hand over to Dave to go over this experience.
I think one of the reasons why I use the word humanoids and not Nordics as well is because I've tried, I have done in the past to be fair, but what I'm always trying to do is to keep an open mind about what's happened. I've been told some incredible things by these guys, and I don't actually know if any of it's true. I don't know if they're tricksters. I don't know if they are what they look like, or whether they're shapeshifters. I've learned about it all now because I've read all the books now, and I've read David Icke. I know some of the things that are going on apparently, and I don't try not to take anything at face value. I think it's the only way you can. These guys, they, for all appearances, they look very much a little bit like how I look now, but like cleaner and in better shape and stuff, But but there is a sort of similarity in the overall look, the sort of long shoulder length hair and sort of sort of sharpish features, and for all intents and purposes, reasonably humanoid. I don't think, to be fair, you'd walk past one in the street and not take any notice of them. I think maybe you would in a busy street in London if they were wearing sunglasses and there was a lot of people about. Do you know what I mean? You might. But I think if you were just walking down a lane on your own and one of them walked past you and looked at you, I think you would definitely know that, although you were looking at something very humanoid, it wasn't human. It's definitely got a non-human energy. It's very hard to describe unless you've experienced it, to be fair. This night I'm with Ricky again, and there's something about Ricky. Ricky's important in this story, actually, and he's lived quite an interesting life. You could probably get Ricky up here yourself, and he could sit here all night long and tell you as many interesting stories that don't include me, to be fair. But he was one of the first people that helped me realise that I wasn't crazy. So we were in the garden at my house, and a UFO came over pretty low and sat out the back of the garden. I had a very strong compulsion in my head telling me that we should go inside and meditate, and that's what we did. And now there's, for a lot of this experience, I wasn't conscious. I thought I was, but it turns out that I was out for about 10 minutes of it, but Ricky experienced a more fluid stream of what happened. 3 guys came in through the back door. They walked through the door. They didn't open the door, which again I find really odd. There's odd things about these guys, right? So why, if you can walk through walls and doors, why use the doorway? Why not just walk through the wall? Anywhere. But they didn't. They go to the door and then walk through the door. There was 3 of them. I was on one sofa, sitting cross-legged, trying to balance my energies. We had awareness this was about to happen, so we were trying to balance our energy. We were told that we'd have very quickly this sort of happened, but we were told that we'd have a more conscious experience, and it was for a reason that we should meditate and get ourselves ready and calm. 3 guys came in. One of them looks a lot like me, like a hell of a lot like me, right? And actually said on numerous occasions, and told Ricky that night, that he was me. Don't know what that means. But he said he was me. He said that there was I don't think he meant it in the grandest spiritual sense either. I do think he meant it more relative, as in he was suggesting that me and him had some sort of overlap of egos or personalities, and therefore that's why I was having such a fluid relationship with him, because there was an absolute resonance, as if he was me. I know it's an out there concept, but I'm just telling you what he said. Right? I'm not saying that I believe it, or that it's true, or that I'm an alien, or anything like that. I'm just telling you what he said. So the other two guys, and the guy that looked like me seemed to be in charge, right? He was definitely like as in coordinating the events. He was stood still in between the two sofas, and you could see that there was communication going on between him and the other guys, and not necessarily as much with us. So one guy comes and sits like nearly on the floor next to me, and another guy goes and sits next to Ricky on the sofa. Now, I thought that the experience lasted only maybe a minute or two at the most. I was sitting there, I thought, okay, they've come in, it's as if they've exposed themselves to Ricky consciously in front of me, and I think some of it was to help me as well, like so that Ricky could share the experience with me and, you know, support me to know that I really wasn't going through some sort of self-delusion. And so I thought it would only happen for a minute or two, and I remember seeing the other guy on the other sofa wave at Ricky like a child. And that's how he did it. He sort of went, it's really weird, right? Just as if he'd never waved at anyone before, and he sort of went like this to Ricky. And then they got up and they walked out. And I mean, although I never saw the UFO leave, I did see there was a light change outside in the garden, you know, so I'm assuming that was a craft going or them going, you know. I've seen them without craft. I've seen craft without them. I assume that the two are connected, but I'm not going to guarantee it. I don't think there's any actual need for a craft, or if there is, then they don't always show it. Let's put it that way. Ricky said that the experience actually lasted about 10, 12 minutes, like 15 minutes. He said that the guy next to me stood up and he like laid me out calmly, like with my assistance, and laid me out on my sofa. And then he said there was like light work going on. He was like running his hands underneath my body. Even though, I mean, it was in the sofa, but at the same time, this guy seemed to be running his hands underneath my body with a light and was going backwards and forwards and doing things. And then the guy that was on the other sofa sitting next to Ricky was telling him like a kind of very, I suppose, stereotypical, maybe it was just a telepathic interpretation. But Ricky was being told that I was not being harmed and that, you know, that it was absolutely fine and just sit there and just watch and it was fine. Ricky got told that he wasn't being debilitated either. But he said that, and I do know exactly what he's talking about, I felt the same, that, you know, if you were sitting in a room and then like a notorious murderer walked in, right? And you didn't feel like moving, you know, it's like, you know, he sort of gave you the impression that maybe the first person to move in the room is going to get it, and although he wasn't actually doing you, like stopping you from moving, you had a kind of stiffness in your muscles that was thinking, hey, I'm not moving, I'll let someone else move. Do you know what I mean? It was like that. And Ricky experienced that. He said he never moved for the whole like 10, 12 minutes, and he just had this kind of feeling that these people would... Now, they are not good people. They'd be the first people to tell you that. If they'd only come here, it'd make my talks a lot more interesting if they would just turn up and say all this for me, to be fair. But like, I think, to be fair, there is an element out there in the universe that is beyond good or bad. I think it doesn't perceive itself as good or bad. It just perceives itself as conscious or unconscious, and these guys are like super conscious. But they would never tell you that they were good people, or that they were of the light, or that they're the angels coming to save you. They seem to be beyond that paradigm. And they give you the impression that they could do the most wondrous things, and yet they could also kill you at the drop of a hat. Does that make sense? You know, they are free, and they're kind of like untamed. That's a word that, wild. You know, wild, but not in the same way that someone that you think, oh God, he's dangerous. You know, not quite like that. In a much more conscious and intelligent way, but nevertheless they are not tame. And I think human beings are perceived to be very tamed and under control compared to other conscious beings that are like, you know, living a grander reality out there in the universe. And I believe that part of the interaction between us and them is. It must be a long game. It must be a long game, man. But like, it's to try and untame us so that we start. I think there's a lot of stuff probably going on in the world at the moment that only goes on because of how acquiescent we are to it. And I think a lot of that comes from the fear, and it comes from us being conditioned to believe that we're powerless and stuff. And I believe that there's an element where they want to change that, or at least they'd like to see us change that, or maybe we want to change it and we brought them to ourselves in order to assist us with that change or whatever. But there's a lot of sort of like unattractive times ahead that we need to sort of like face ourselves, and I think it's probably been so long since humanity's done that it's getting worse and worse to look at it. It's becoming like the washing up, you know? Yeah. You know, we're going, oh God, we've done this wrong, and oh God, and we're not looking at it, and the shadows in the world are getting deeper and deeper, and then of course, like, you know, that allows for other things to happen where we don't want to look at shadows. But I believe that's changing, and I believe that these guys, they definitely tell me and perceive themselves to be kind of like engineers in this change, as if they talk about mind control, and they talk about those sort of things, do you know what I mean? And also put me on to, and I'm not endorsing him, because I'm not saying that I believe what he's written or where he's coming from or how genuine he is, but they definitely put me onto David Icke's work. And then I had a couple of funny experiences, like, you know, like the classics, going into a bookshop and having a David Icke book fall off a shelf in front of me. Okay, and I had then my wife came home and said, oh, I brought these books for 50p from the library. They were giving them away at 50p, so I just picked them up and, you know, and had them, and it was like David Icke's Children of the Matrix and stuff, and I'd never heard of it before and all this kind of stuff. And it's that book, those books sort of psychologically helped me gain a black and white understanding of like kind of what was going on in the world. And it was, what he was saying was totally in line with what these people are saying. But I'm not endorsing him, I'm just telling you the way it is, you know what I mean, for me.
Thanks, David. Absolutely fascinating. Okay, let's have a look at some pictures again for you guys. So here's the this is the UFO. So we're talking about a proper structured craft here. I'm not talking about just the light in the sky this time. It was a proper structured object hovering over the back garden. It was interpreted it landed nearby. Do you think?
No, I got a feeling it probably just stayed there.
Right.
Yeah.
You felt it was kind of just hovering over the area. Yeah. So yeah, the control of witnesses, Dave mentioned. Yeah, again, it's something that commonly occurs with contact, and also close-up UFO sightings as well that haven't or don't appear to have involved direct interaction. It's not all the time, but in certain cases, the beings do appear to sort of take over individuals, invasion of the body snatchers, basically allow them to sort of move people around or get them to do things. It's very, very common that contactees, when they experience contact, won't act in a normal manner. They'll kind of be completely complacent towards what's happening, and I've heard that again and again and again. It's very, very commonly reported. So they may see a being appear in their room, and they won't run out screaming and just run out the house or wake up their spouse or whatever. They will just accept it. They'll just be like, oh, okay, there's an alien over there, you know, and they won't act in a normal manner. And that, I believe that's something that the beings are doing. They're putting this kind of alt factor, as Dave's mentioned, is kind of this altered state of reality where people don't act in their normal manner. And I believe that's also one of the reasons why there's not that many pictures around of abductions taking place. Like, you think of everybody with smartphones these days, you know, well, where's all the shots of people taking the photos of the beings just as they're about to get abducted by them? Now, the fact of the matter is that when you look into these cases directly, you find that most of the time the individual is completely transfixed and not in their normal frame of mind. So they're not thinking, oh, I'm going to get my camera and take a photo. They're just going along with it and what's happening. So, and that's the genuine truth. The beings encountered, as Dave mentioned, the same beings. This is the first time he's mentioned them tonight, but those of you who are here for part one will have heard him talk about other experiences with these beings. This particular group, especially with the being that looks like him. Dave's mentioned him here. There it says "other me." Is written on there. So yeah, it's very interesting that one of them looks just like Dave, and we did discuss that in great detail in part one and what that may mean. So I won't kind of repeat myself with that. But it's if those of you who were here last month, Susie Hansen talking about the dual soul connection with the beings sort of latching onto an individual, it's very very possible something similar's gone on here with this other being that's just like him. So he's drawn there himself and one of them, and there's Ricky there, and the other one went and sat next to him. So, and then there was this interesting examination procedure with the light. We don't know what that was about, so you didn't feel like you were healed or anything afterwards, did you know?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, while we're clarifying then. No, Ricky was told that they were saying that there was energy work being done on me, that apparently I wouldn't have made it to this age otherwise. They were saying that I'm like quite terrible to myself, and they were saying that they have to do energy work on me in order to keep me in a reasonable healthy state. But I don't know why that was, but it was just like apparently they were having to sort of do some sort of energy work. So so I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, so there's an element of healing going on there, and again, that's something that crops up from time to time with cases. I've dealt with a number of cases where people have had sort of bad backs, and then they've had an abduction experience, and they've said that the beings have done something to their back, and the next day their back's feeling a lot better. I've heard that numerous times from contactees. They do appear to be looking after the people that they're in contact with. Now, that could be interpreted in a number of different ways as to why they're looking after them, but it does seem to suggest a sort of more positive rather than negative thing with that. So again, Ricky, I spoke with Ricky in detail about this, and he confirmed that it had happened for a start. Actually, he didn't mention this a minute ago. They did have the sense afterwards, and I don't know whether you got this too, though, but Ricky said he got the sense that he was going to forget the incident afterwards. It was kind of like it was all...
talking to me about it, constantly, just as after it happened. He talked, and we had to do this thing to hold on to it.
Yeah.
I could feel it wanting to go. And I've had it before, where I've seen UFOs with other people, and they've been blown away. Right, sorry, Dave, I'm sorry, mate.
It's all good.
But, right, now... I had just another experience shared, and unfortunately she's not here tonight, but you've met Emma and stuff, yeah? We were driving in the car one night, and...
Okay, we're going to go over that a bit.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll talk about this in a bit.
It's in date. It's in date order.
I should have looked at what they were talking about.
That's right, yeah. We're going to hear all about that in a bit. So it is a very, very good sighting, actually. They got the sense that we're going to forget, and again, that's something that crops up again and again with contact, and it's directly linked with this whole missing time thing with contact, that the memories are blocked out for whatever reason. It's either that's done to reduce the trauma of having gone through that, or they don't want the person to talk about it with other people, maybe, so to keep the covert thing going, or maybe it's just really so that they can just get on with their normal life, so they don't realise that they're in contact. They can just go about their life and act in a natural manner. Perhaps the beings are watching how people are acting in their normal environment, and if they realise they're being studied or interacted with in some way with these beings, that will obviously affect them in a lot of ways, as has happened with Dave and those around him. Absolutely. So we've got Ricky's testimony here, a few snippets from what Ricky said about this. I was looking up and a huge craft came overhead, moving really slow and not very high in the sky at all. I could see symbols on the craft, so much intricate detail all over it. It got so low I couldn't see over the fence anymore, but it looked like it was going to land somewhere close by. I opened my eyes from the meditation and looked around and saw some beings walking straight through Dave's back door while it was still closed. They were humanoid and looked like they had glowing shells to them. You could barely notice features of their faces. Now this is very interesting because when Dave described the experience, he saw them as kind of humanoid figures, whereas Ricky's seeing them somewhat differently.
Yeah, they can have like a...
Sometimes they do have a bit of a luminescence about them, as if you can see the auras, do you know what I mean? But then you can see it on people too, if you know how to look at them. I'm trying to think what was actually, there was a point there, as you said something, there was something I wanted to bring up. Oh, okay, right. Now, I've had this before as well, where I've seen UFOs, and I can see a craft, and the person next to me is going, oh wow, that is amazing, that UFO, man, that white light. And so I know we're looking at the same thing. And this is where I was saying about there's possible a dynamic, I don't know about that clairvoyance or whatever, It's possible that we're both looking at the same thing, and yet I'm seeing it in a slightly wider spectrum of what I'm capable of decoding or whatever, and they're not seeing that. So they see an orange light or just a bit of a light, and I saw like an orange orb when, an oval light when Marcus saw it, but he only saw lights, do you know what I mean? Yeah, but I saw that. Other times other people have seen lights and I can see a metal craft. So I'm just saying there's an element to that, that when people describe the beings and stuff, sometimes I'm seeing them slightly differently to the way they're seeing them, and I wouldn't for 1 second say I'm seeing them better than they are, but we definitely see them differently.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is that skeptics who say that contact can all be explained by something in their mind will point towards that, and they'll be like, but people, when they've had a multiple experience, they're reporting different things. The beings look different, so therefore they're all making it up, and it's all in their mind. And again, if you look into the cases, if you do the detail, you go down into the cases, and you hear, when you listen, you take on board what people are saying, you realise that that's part of the experience, and that's something that skeptics will never take on board. They'll never take on board those aspects. They won't. The fact that the beings can appear differently to different people, that's a known thing, and it's directly, I believe, it's directly linked with the fact that they're connecting on a kind of psychic level. It's not just a sort of physical thing, a physical kind of bang bang right there. It's like multi-dimensional. We're dealing with very advanced stuff here. So it's possible that the interpretation of the brain is seeing them in different lights, or maybe the beings are projecting themselves differently to different people, and they are choosing how they want to appear to the individual, which again has links with the screen memories aspect of contact, which I won't go into detail on right now. So yeah, back to his testimony. Anyway, we got sidetracked there. One of them came and sat on the sofa right next to me. Another came to the centre of the living room, and another stayed near the back door. The being in the centre of the living room walked over to Dave and started running his hand around Dave's body. The being's hand had light coming from it. It looked like they were scanning his body for something. This went on for a few minutes, then the being turned and walked back towards the back door. The being sat next to me and looked right at me and put a hand up and started waving right in my face. I smiled and watched them walk back through the door. A few seconds later, Dave sat up and looked at me and said, "I think we just had contact, Rick." I laughed and said, "Yeah, you think?" Very good testimony. And again, you can see the similarities coming through there. That wasn't prepared or anything. That was me speaking with Ricky. Just when I went down there, just can we go over the experiences? Bang, right into them.
Just to clarify, I haven't seen Ricky either. She's been away.
It's not like me and Ricky are together all the time at the moment. Ricky's been away in Australia and America for the last few years, and he literally just got back and spoke to Dave. And I'm kind of still waiting to catch up with him myself, to be honest with you, because he's working 40 hours a day and I'm just not seeing him. So, but yeah, this weekend hopefully I'm going to catch up.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to move on now to a possible alien implant here. Many of you, in fact pretty much everybody in the room will probably know what that is. I'll very briefly cover it. Essentially, some contactees have found sort of small metallic objects inside their bodies, and sometimes they're detected on X-rays, which is why the X-ray picture's up there, and sometimes they'll actually fall out to people. They can sometimes be placed sort of up at the bridge of the nose, and they'll actually drop out with a nosebleed. Now, nobody really knows exactly what they're for, but it's interpreted that they're kind of either some sort of tracking device, like the way that we tag animals in the wild. They're possibly monitoring the body systems. Roger Lear in America has done some brilliant work on implants, now deceased sadly. But he said that the implants they were finding were attached directly to the central nervous system of the individual, so it's possible that they're sort of monitoring the body systems. But these aren't objects with sort of complex wires or circuit boards or anything like that inside. They're just a mix of metals, and a mix of metals that are found on Earth. But they do appear to have something to do with the contact experience. So anyway, was there an implant detected with Dave? I'll hand over to him to go over briefly what happened with this incident.
Incident at work. Yeah. Okay. I was working on like an exciting life, like we all do in a factory, working temping on a belt feed that was bringing food through, and it had one of these big. I didn't even know what it was at the time, because it's like you're temping, they just chuck you on a line and you don't really know what you're doing. But there was a big like metal bridge thing going over the conveyor belt, and it had these 25 kilo sort of bags coming through, which was stacking up. So I was told to just stand there, and as the bags come through, take the bags off and throw them on the pallets. This isn't the most interesting part of the story. And I stood there, and of course, because no one actually said to me, "Oh, and don't put your hand in there," as I was getting on top of myself, I sort of saw one coming through and just went through to grab the bag and pull it like along to myself. I stuck my hand in, the alarms went off and the machine started like whirring and stuff, and came to a halt and everything, and the line manager came up to me. And he was going, what's happened, sort of thing. And I said, I don't know, mate. I said, I just sort of like put my hand through here to grab this bag. I said, and all the red lights started flashing off and everything. And he went, oh, you're not supposed to put your hands in there, mate. You've got a watch on or something. And I was like, no, I don't, because I purposely don't wear jewellery and stuff. And I had no rings, no nothing, you know what I mean? Tattoos are enough for me. Saves me putting rings on every day and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, no, I haven't. And he was like, all right. So he reset it all. I put my hand in again, and it went off again. And he came over and he was a bit perplexed. He was like looking at my hands, and I was like, look, there's no metal on my hands. And but turns out like he put his hand in there just to double check, and it didn't do anything. But when I put my hands in there, it set off the metal detectors. So, you know, what do you say? What do you say? There's some metal in my hands, but I don't know where from. Do you know what I mean? I have no recollection of no shrapnel in my hands, or you know, I've got no scars on my hands from entry wounds or anything like that. So, yeah, I don't know, but I've got some metal inside of me though.
Yes, yeah, as Dave says, does he have metal inside him? Well, it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? When you put his hand under there, former line manager did the same thing, didn't go off, so you've got the double test there, really. So it certainly appeared to have something going on there. So it was proven by that they did, that it wasn't a machine malfunction that was going on. Now, he hasn't checked it again, he hasn't gone for any x-rays or anything, have you know?
No,
What about
metal
airport?
detector.
But airport scanners have been through one of them.
Oh,
That's the question, isn't it?
Well, the last time I went abroad was, I don't even think I went for a scanner to be fair, it was like, it was at least 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think things have changed a lot, I just wouldn't go for it airport now, to be honest, I don't think I'd make it out there.
So yeah, the question is the object, whatever this metal thing was, is it still there? Well, there's possibilities. There's one there. There's a photograph of one of the ones that Roger Lear removed in America. This one's a rounded, triangular shaped, almost like a T-shaped thing. And it actually had two interlocking metal pieces inside this kind of outer casing that was appeared to be made up of kind of membranes from the person's body, which was very interesting because Roger said that because it had the membranes around it, the body wouldn't have rejected it as a foreign object. Very, very interesting. So that's an example there. Oops, sorry, going too far ahead there. Yeah, so yeah, possibilities. Right, so are we going to look for it? Absolutely, we're going to look for it. Have we yet? No, we haven't. I plan to buy a stud finder in the next sort of coming months, and we're going to actually sort of see if it's still there. If it is there, then obviously the next step with that would be to arrange for a private X-ray. You can't go and get an X-ray. You can't just go down to the doctors and say, "Can you please X-ray me?" It has to be a valid reason. And even if there is a valid medical reason, like it's really hurting or anything, they'll keep the X-ray. So the only way of getting the X-ray picture yourself is by paying dope and saying, "Here you go, we want an X-ray on the hand." But if there is a metal object there, that is definitely the next step that we would go with that. So wouldn't it be fascinating if we find something? So I'll keep you all updated on how that progresses, and obviously any new information will be added to the massive case report that's on the website about Dave's case. Anyway, sorry, yeah, so so moving on. Yeah, let's go with the hooded grey incident 2007 that happened.
I haven't actually agreed to have my hands x-rayed and just cut open and have things ripped out of my hand. I'm in a band, mate. I'm a guitarist, man.
That's a nice one, yeah, with a pen off.
Yeah, you'll have to catch me first, mate. All right, this was. We're telling these stories for diversity of stories, but then this was a different type of story that happened to me. At the time, I was still with my wife, and we're still together now, but we're not together. We were sleeping in bed, and I woke up. You know, you do sometimes. In the middle of the night, I woke up, and I was able to stay still. I looked over to my right, and my wife was sleeping on my right-hand side, and then next to the bed was a grey, and he had a black hood on, like as if he was a little habit. Yeah, like what's the word to use? Like those, is it habits that monks wear? That sort of thing, like a little black one of them. And he was stood there, and he was just still, right? And I'm not sure how good an impression I'm doing of a grey at the moment. Put my hood up, right? And he was stood there, just stock still, right? Just stood next to the bed, and he appeared, although he had the classic sort of black eyes and stuff, but he appeared to be looking at my wife, right? He was just stood there, just like as if he was just doing this, just looking. So I had this unique situation that happened that doesn't always happen to you when you wake up. I woke up, I saw him, but I managed to stay dead still. I didn't panic. I didn't like fully wake up to the point where I sort of had to move, or I had a sort of control, and I laid there and I looked at him, but like just with my eyes, and I wasn't panicking. I could feel myself waking up more and more by the second, and I realised it was going to get harder and harder to stay calm. And then I did this crazy thing, like you would, Dave. You would do it. I know you'd do it. Right? I lashed out at it. I lashed out to grab it. Right? He was over the other side of my wife, and at the time, I was a quite fit guy and stuff. I thought this guy's only 4 foot tall, man. I can take this guy. And I lashed out to grab his arm. Okay. Now what he did in response to that was he turned. Now I'm telling you now, right, up until that point I was experiencing him as a physical being. He looked physical. I know it was dark and I know he just woke up, but there was nothing about him that was telling me that he was etheric, He didn't look like a ghost. He looked like a little grey alien with a hood on stood in the bedroom. That's what he looked like. When I went to grab him, he turned, like as if he wanted to react to me, to get away from me, and as he turned, he went like that. And then it was like he was smoke, and he just went and dissipated. It didn't dissipate like the way smoke would, he dissipated into nothing very quickly, but it was as if his physical body just dissipated, and he was gone. But I was awake. I was awake when that happened. I wasn't waking up. I'd gone through the waking up process, and then I was laying there and I was watching him, and I was managing to stay still, and I thought, this guy does not know I've woken up. That's the impression I got. Which again, you'd think, they must be all powerful and all aware and all knowing and stuff. And yet actually, this guy definitely was surprised by what I did. He did not know I was about to lunge at him. I tell you, he didn't. And the way he reacted was the way someone does when they're not really prepared, for what you're about to do. And he just panicked. He turned around, he disappeared, and left me in the bedroom thinking, it's time to go back to sleep.
Amazing. There he is. There he is. There's a drawing that Dave's done of him. It says, woke up and this guy was standing next to bed on Haley's side. About 5 foot, wearing a hooded robe. Tried to grab him, but he turned and then dissipated. So very interesting. Now most of Dave's experiences have featured humanoids. But he has had a number of experiences, one of which we discussed in part 1, involving greys. So he's seeing sort of multiple species or types, however you want to say it. The fact that Dave reached out to grab the being means he wasn't undergoing sleep paralysis. Now this is back to the sceptical viewpoints here, because I love the skeptics, and I love to hear the sceptical viewpoints and then answer them logically. Yeah. Now there are some skeptics out there who will tell you that sleep paralysis is the answer to contact. That everybody is experiencing contact. Never mind the people who are getting taken from their cars or multiple abductions. Let's ignore all that and pretend it doesn't exist. Let's look here at the cases where it's an individual in their bedroom and they're woken up in the middle of the night. Now, it is true that under sleep paralysis you can see figures, shadowy forms in the room. You can feel like there's an evil presence there. You can see strange lights, hear strange buzzing noises. There is a lot of crossover with contact, and it would be unwise of me to not take that on board. There is a lot of crossover. It's very interesting actually, the crossover with that. Are we dealing with one thing that's occurring with both these types of experiences? However, in sleep paralysis, you can't move, That's what's called sleep paralysis. You can usually move your eyes or sometimes tilt your head a tiny weeny bit. That's never happened to me, thank God, because it sounds absolutely flipping terrifying. I'm very glad it hasn't happened to me. But under sleep paralysis, you can see things, but you can't move. Well, the fact that Dave reached out to grab the grey means he wasn't paralysed. So he had full response, which means which gives it a level of physicality that moves against it being sleep paralysis as an explanation. The instant vanishing of Gray. So what was going on with that? Was he cloaking himself and sort of still there but couldn't be seen anymore? Had he shifted through to another dimension of reality? Maybe kind of teleported off elsewhere back to his craft or anything? We don't know. These are all you've all got ideas running in your head right now as to what was happening with that at the end of that experience. But very interesting, and again, it's not the only case that I've dealt with where they've done that. So they appear to have this level of physicality where they can come into a physical environment, they can grab people, they can lead them places, that sort of thing, but then they also can shift and not be physical anymore, be sort of metaphysical and vanish at will. Very interesting indeed. Let's have a look at the Stoke Wood UFO incident in 2008. This is where you were walking on the road.
Just as a final point on what happened that night as well, one thing I can remember, as you were saying that, Dave, I can remember having a slight feeling of relief that I didn't grab him. When what actually happened, as in like he just disappeared, which is kind of really what I wanted him to do. Yeah, I was quite pleased. I thought there was a thought went through my head just as I was laying down in bed, thinking, God, you could be wrestling with an alien right now, and I'm quite pleased that he just disappeared. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, you know, I just don't know what would have happened. I would have had to try and find Dave's phone number and say, "Get here now, man. The search is over." Yeah, Stoke Woods. Yeah, it's strange little woods that me and these guys will probably go to, not as regularly as we used to, but as regularly as we can. At the time, I was going through a phase of walking from Brackley to Bicester quite regularly, because I was staying at a friend's house in Brackley and I was going to see the kids in Bicester. And it was quite a long walk, but he took me past Stoke Woods, a road that goes past Stoke Woods. Yeah, one day I was walking down there, and I'd been walking for a few hours and stuff, but it was the middle of the day and it was a nice day. It looked a little bit like that picture does, and I was walking down the road, and then I had Stoke Woods off to my right hand side. I stopped, and I saw an orange light come over the tree line, and like you must have seen it as well. Everyone's seen a plane with its headlights on, coming at you over a hedgerow. You know what I mean? And for a while, I thought that's what I was looking at, but there was something that made me stop and carry on staring at it because it was very orange. I don't know how orange something can be, but it was just very orange, Orange. Yeah, orange.
They do look like that. They do look like that.
Sorry?
They do look like that, don't they?
Right, yeah, orange.
Planes,
like orange. I can't emphasise the orangeness. But if there was a word that means really orange, that'd be the word it was. And it sort of like came over the horizon, which was a tree line, and it just was coming towards me slowly in the middle of the day, and it's daylight, and there was an orange oval UFO that looked wrong, was coming towards me, and that is all I remember of that. It sort of came right over me. That's all I remember. Middle of the day, and the next thing I know, I was stood in the middle of the road, which is a fairly dangerous road. Any of these guys would know it's a fairly dangerous road to be stood in the middle of, because it's quite windy and cars do go fast down there, and you wouldn't really want to get caught in the middle of the road. But there wasn't any cars about. There was no one about. And again, we're talking like in the middle of the day, and that's reasonably unusual. You'd have to be good timing, for you to find yourself in the road and not have a car beeping at you down there. But that's what happened. And then I basically had to walk about another 1.5 miles to get to a kid's house. And it's another walk in my life, another day in my life trying to get somewhere on time. Is that enough, David?
It's fine, thank you. Excellent. So another UFO sighting here, and possible abduction, at least interpreted. There's a couple of pictures. This is Stoke Wood here. This is the road that Dave was walking down, the B4100, which coincidentally is the same road that Dave had his family abduction with his wife and daughter on, which we discussed in part 1 for any of you here. It's a very long road that goes for many, many miles. And
Sorry, Dave, because I know you're going to find this of interest. Years later, I picked up a book that was called Ghosts in Oxfordshire, and in the book on Ghosts in Oxfordshire, they talked about the B4100 and said that it was a haunted road, and that there's multiple signs of ghosts down there, and there's also a Morris Minor that goes down there that chases people about until it disappears around them and stuff. And apparently, it's a renowned road for spooky stuff happening. But I'm just saying, I don't know if that relates to what happened to me on that road, but it's the same road.
Excellent, thanks for that. Very interesting. Yes, as Dave described, a glowing orange disc, or oval-shaped object. There it is up there, right at the top. So he is walking along the road. There's the tree line there with the UFO coming over. and it appeared to sort of emerge either from the wood, maybe it'd been down in the trees, or maybe it was just in the distance, and that's where he'd sort of first seen it. Possible abduction, I would say, all pointing towards an abduction, to be fair. Period of missing time. UFO comes in really close, all of a sudden a period of missing time, and then he's standing in the middle of the road. And I've heard that so many times off different contactees, and it's very, very likely that he was taken during that time. It didn't check his watch or anything, so we had no idea whether there was any period of missing time there. Didn't have a watch on, never go, so didn't have a watch, so no way of knowing really. So it wasn't long, was it? It wasn't like hours and hours had gone by.
No, it's only been 10, 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise my wife and kids won't notice too much.
Absolutely, yeah. So they didn't. So when he arrived at his destination, they didn't notice that he was particularly late. So missing time unknown on that one. Right, are you okay with going over this one? I know it involves Phil, but you're all right with discussing this bit, though.
Oh, it's just me and Phil down
Yeah.
Yeah, but well,
Yeah.
as long as Phil's alright about wherever it is.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
He's okay. Yeah, this is a night where I was with a friend of mine called Phil Graham, and there's some, at the time I was going through I've got we could get into it, you know what I mean, we could really get into it if you want to know the sort of like, you know, how this sort of things this can affect your life and stuff, but to cut a long story short, because I think we've only got one night, I was basically homeless, and I was living in a tent in some woods on an estate called Bure Park in Bicester. And at the time, different people were coming down, looking after me. Some of the guys at the back there, cheers guys, I'm still here. And they were sort of feeding me and, you know, making sure I was okay as for my basics. And Phil was one of the guys that was coming down and doing that. And one night we were walking down through a place that we call Eden for some reason, because Adam could explain that more, couldn't you? You called it Eden, didn't you? Yeah. And it's sort of like we saw well-free Nordics, if you like. Do you know what I mean? Like they basically were more there to see Phil, and that's why it's a bit awkward for me to talk about it, because at the moment Phil sort of, me and Phil aren't actually sort of speaking as friends. I'm just being honest with you and telling you what's happening. But we're not. He's not speaking to us. It's got to do with the band, really, to be fair, mostly. But Phil had a face-to-face interaction with these same guys that have been coming to me for years. I was removed slightly from it, but witnessed it. To be fair, it probably would be better for Phil to talk about it, I think, yeah, because it's like, you know...
I've got some quotes from him.
Oh, okay, wicked, right, cool, yeah. I was there, Phil will tell you about it.
Okay, yeah, we've got a few drawings and photographs to show you here. So yeah, that's there's the site where Dave, that's right, isn't it? That's correct, yeah. Yeah, this is part of Bure Park here. That's where Dave was, in an area of trees. There's the space where his tempest pitch went out and headed out to the location. Obviously, there was somewhere else nearby to check out. Yeah, so this female Nordic or humanoid, whatever you want to call Palladian, she was one of the beings that Dave recognised from your first meeting with them. With his wife and daughter. This is the location here on the left, is a photograph of where the beings were. So David got back up to the tent, and he came back down and found Phil standing there with this female Nordic talking to him, and there were sort of shadows. It was after dark, remember, again, so very different. But there was kind of silhouettes of others back there as well. Two others, I believe, so 3 in total. So yeah, Phil appeared to be engaging in some sort of discussion with this female being. So yeah, as Dave pointed out, the focus was clearly on Phil rather than him, which is very interesting. Phil has actually had some other contact experiences earlier in his life, but the fact that they were visiting him and they were the same beings, that it's very interesting that there was an interaction there. It showed kind of, and it's something that's very, very rare with contact cases, because usually contact only involves kind of particular individuals or particular family line, and it doesn't kind of branch out to sort of friends and outside of that. So this is fascinating, the fact that they wanted to have this communication with Phil, who was just essentially just along there for the night. So yeah, what were the reasons, the possibilities of this? as I've just discussed, maybe they were making themselves known to him. At least that's what Phil seems to think. He seems to think he was kind of ready to sort of see them. And they'd sort of announce himself to him in this very, very direct way, just essentially appearing into his physical reality. And again, it changed him as a person, didn't it, Dave?
Well, I know Phil's not here, but if you ever get to meet him and he ever tells you about his stories, it's very challenging what Phil's been through, and and it pushed his psyche right to the edge of his health. I'm waiting for. I'm going to be really pleased when it's over. You know what I mean? When he's fully integrated the experiences, because he was a great guy, and sometimes this stuff sends you off the rails. Sometimes it does. It's too threatening to the psyche, or too threatening to the ego, or whatever you want to call your personality. And there are sort of I'm sure the mental hospitals up and down the country are full of people that have actually had genuine experiences and have not had it handled in a healthy way, or had the right tools in their box to work through it. But we'll see.
There is some discrepancies, again, like the earlier experience we were discussing. There's some discrepancies in the recollection of the event and the appearance of this female being. So I don't know whether they mentioned in the quotes. Let's have a look at some of the things he said. So this is from Phil's testimony, which he gave me a full-on detailed written testimony at my wish, essentially. As I was walking down the lane towards Eden, I noticed something I'd never observed before my peripheral vision. This attracted my attention, so I turned to my right. I was now facing a humanoid being which appeared to be female. She was roughly the same height as me, and we stood eye to eye. The being had long dark hair with a pale skin tone. Her eyes were big and black, yet angelic. I noticed that her jawline was elongated, which caused her chin and mouth to be disproportionate to her eyes. The space around her was colourful, but distorted. I had some questions forming in my mind about the validity of what I was experiencing. Before I could form a sentence, every question was getting answered. I'm sure we were communicating via telepathy. I felt compelled to check the solidarity of this humanoid figure, so I placed my right hand on her left shoulder. At this point, I realised that she was very real. I felt slightly uneasy. After looking around, I realised that I couldn't see Dave. It was suggested that I go and retrieve him from the bottom of Eden. My next question was, what if he wasn't here when I get back? Then I could see the mental image of the being Dave and I all stood communicating. I asked if he wanted to say hi to the being I'd just met. Dave's personality didn't seem any different, and he agreed, so we continued to walk back down the lane. As we did so, Dave had already acknowledged the being as we approached. I didn't need to point it out. On arriving back, we all stood in one another's company, not speaking. At this point, I became fearful of the reality I was facing. I raised my hand to the being, and then it disappeared. The being disappeared, not his hand. So that's some very detailed testimony, and he's given me, I believe the full testimony is written in the case report, and it goes on for numerous pages. Obviously, it's an experience that profoundly affected him on numerous levels. Now, I've mentioned there the discrepancies between the experience. Do you want to go over that? The end of that was different, wasn't it, to what you recall happening?
Yeah. To be fair, Dave, there was a really important point that you just brought up.
Yeah.
Hang on, when oh yes, okay. I do believe that there's something strange about me. I do. Oh, right, it's okay. Because other people, if they go through the experiences with me, I see them go through a process, like a very normal process of trauma and overcoming trauma, and then trying to enter into a new paradigm and stuff. And I swear, on some levels, I must be a little bit crazy, but crazy in the right way, in the perfect way, which allows me to remember these things that happen to me. It's like Phil will say, Dave wasn't fussed and that, and I don't understand why. I just don't understand why it is that it's not affected me like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I know that, I don't know, different people are afraid of different things or whatever, and I think I'm sort of kind of built for contact in a way, because it hasn't, although it's obviously affected my life, but there's a part of me that, whereas I think a lot of people, if they experience contact, what they would do is they'd forget about it, carry on with their life, pretend it never happened, a very good level of self-denial, so they don't even have to do that consciously, they just carry on with their life like it never happened. There's something in my psychological makeup which has allowed me to integrate the experiences to the point where they're not even as threatening to my psyche anymore now, where I'm just experiencing them and remembering them. Because seeing these guys is not threatening to my psychological health. But I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, I'm just saying that there must be something different about me, otherwise surely I wouldn't be stood here, we'd all be having the conversation about all the beings that we talk to all the time, do you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure that's the case, because I believe that if you are a human being, or a being, let's say, a sentient being, you're a spiritual being, I believe that, and therefore I believe that you have a spiritual connection to a lot of other beings in the universe, or in the other dimensions, or other terminology you want to use. So I would assume that all of us at some point are having some sort of spiritual contact with other beings. Has it got to be the case? It's got to be the case, just in the same way we've all got family. You know what I mean? And they get hold of me every now and then as well. But I believe that it's got to be the case, and that ultimately the only difference between me and most of you in here is my ability to hold on to it. That's what, I would say that, you know what I mean? And so therefore, when I have experiences with the other guys, I do feel as if they react differently to the way that I have done, So, yeah. So.
I just understand over that one, move on to the next experience.
Okay, yeah.
So the incident with the UFOs with yourself, Adam, and the lights in the sky, white lights.
Was that not Adam though? Was I there?
Adam was there as well.
Adam, come up here, mate. Come up here for a second.
Hello.
We're getting to my short-term memory now. It's destroyed. But come into my short-term memory, please, Adam. There you are.
Everybody, round of applause for Adam. Hey. White lights making a little movement.
Which I've seen so many white
That's what I mean, we were watching.
Yeah.
Blowers were there.
Blowers was there.
Blowers up.
Blowers, come up here as well, you were there as well.
Oh, no, yeah, no, totally.
Like, as you said, a lot of the times we do see quite a lot of white lights in the sky. One of the most... Blowers as
We got the
well.
gangs all here. Front rules, Blowers here.
A lot of the time, the past couple of years, we've all sort of kept going out into fields, cigarettes, having a couple of beers and looking up at the sky and that sky gazing, and we've seen quite a lot of different sort of white lights, but these were quite multiple lights, and there were a lot of lights. And at the time it was the top of Cavisfield, which is near a spot that we do go to quite regularly now in the fields. Yeah, no, that's the one it just literally came back to me as I was talking about it. I was like, okay.
Sorry, did you get a multiple sports film?
Yes.
Has anyone discussed it?
Basically that night, the three of us had met up in Cavisfield to talk about some of the experiences we'd had earlier that week. While mainly Blowers and Dave were talking, I was looking up at this, and I must kid you not, there was maybe about 16 different lights, all flying in different directions above us. And we were sort of saying to you, come on Blowers, look at this, look at this.
This is time I was quite down.
But Blowers was more sort of talking, we were sort of talking between each other while this sort of light show was going on about aliens and contact, and we were like, it's right there above you, do you know what I mean? And it was about 16 different, all moving in different speeds, looping, and...
There was two that came together and then went off in the same direction. Sorry, yeah.
I can't do that with both my fingers there. But there was two, right? They came together. I've seen it once in a episode of The X-Files where they were doing this thing about two white lights over a military base that were flying around together, and this is exactly what it looked like. I saw it with my own eyes. It looked like two satellites like you see in the sky, but they were coming together, and as soon as they came together, they went off together, and they flew around in a massive arc, like dancing like that. As if, yeah. And at the same time, Blowers was talking to me, and Blowers is stood in front of me talking about aliens and contact, suggesting that he was going through some experiences. And while he stood there, I was like going, yeah, I know, mate, I know. There's about 7 UFOs up there right now, man. Look up, mate, you know. It was like that, wasn't it? And you can just fill off and tell us what your side of it was.
I was on a bad day. Like Adam said, over the last 7 years, we've gone out loads of times, which is why when I came up here a second ago, I was trying to figure out what the hell you were talking about, or which time it was. Yeah, I mean, we, like, throughout these experiences, like, it's been kind of it's been basically a bit of a spiritual awakening, I guess you'd call it that. But just maybe a conscious awakening, you know, is a better term to use. And throughout that process, my perspective on all of these kind of experiences has changed, you know, dramatically. Like all of us has, you know, started off by getting into conspiracies and then goes from there and there and there and there. And we've seen so many lights in the sky doing so many different things, and so many random peripheral experiences, so many joint experiences, so many just random things happening in the night that it all kind of turns into this one mush of what the fuck is going on. You know what I mean? And this one night, basically, I was having a bit of a bad day because I'd been experiencing shifts in consciousness, where I was kind of through practicing things like meditation and that I was training myself to be able to basically open your mind and be able to experience things in more fullness. Dave earlier was speaking about how sometimes he'll see something and somebody else will see the exact same thing, but they'll actually perceive it slightly differently. And I and Adam and Dave was fascinated with the idea that maybe the reason behind that was that maybe your mind was prepared to experience a certain spectrum of a grander truth at a certain point in time, but that you, through training and releasing the fear that's very innate to all of us of a grander experience, or, you know, we all have issues with power within us, and that I was basically training myself over the last couple of years to be able to widen my scope of vision and see things. And a large part of mine and Dave's relationship has been counselling, because Dave has gone through this stuff for years before I even met him. And I'd always meet up and go around and have a cup of tea and a fag and talk about how I was getting along and new experiences that were going on with Dave. And this one night I was really frustrated, basically, because I felt like I kept hitting a brick wall. It was always 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. You know, for example, in my meditations, I'd be feeling this great, you know, sense of connection with everything around me and great sense of peace, and the next day I couldn't get there and it was very confusing. And I was on the field and I was talking to Dave about this, about how frustrated I was getting, and it was a bit ridiculous because there were 16 UFOs in the sky, and I was going, I just wish that I could get to this point where I could, you know, have control over whether I see them or not. And
just look up then.
Yeah. And the thing is, I was looking up as well, but I was just had it in my mind that I had to basically get to this state of awareness where I could have, I don't know, some sense of control over the degree of what I was experiencing. I know that's slightly off, you know, it's kind of on subject, but it's a slightly different angle. But that, to be honest, everything I think that I just mentioned then is such an integral part to my relationship with Dave and with Adam. And that's basically what I was talking to you about, wasn't it, at that point? And Dave was, as he usually is, very commonly going, just look up in the sky and see these lights doing crazy things and stop bitching and moaning about the fact that you're not an enlightened being. In a more eloquent way, I imagine.
With more swearing, basically.
With a lot more swearing, yeah. He likes to ground me quite a lot. So, yeah. Sorry.
Right on, mate.
Yeah, is that it?
That's it.
That's it, because
Yeah, it was just an example. I was using this because David and me have obviously gone over many experiences. I chose this one specifically to cover with you all because all these 3 guys were involved with it. They all saw it at the same time. So it's not individual interpretation. It's like these things were there, were doing all sorts of stuff, weren't they? I've got some drawings actually that Dave's done. I'd just like to clarify that is just one of so many experiences that we've had as well. It's just like the tip of the iceberg of collective experience. We all have our individual experiences. Dave probably the most intensely
well, definitely the most intensity, but it's ridiculous, really.
That's one of the fascinating things about that, and that's one of the fascinating things about this case, is the fact that it involves so many different people, and it's great, guys. Thanks for coming up and joining us up there for, brilliant. It's a great example of how Dave's experiences are kind of branching out to his associates, his friends, his family, everything. So we've got a couple of maps here. There's the sports field from above. That's the rough position where they were standing. As I said, there were multiple witnesses involved with this. There's some of the movement patterns that Dave's done. These are these two that came together, so you can see them coming together there, and then they're going off on this kind of spiralling kind of pattern, doing an arc around the field. These other ones that you mentioned, Dave, came together and then kind of rotated around one another like this. So there appeared to be a level of intelligence to these white lights, and there were certainly far too many for them to have been high altitude helicopters. I don't believe that for a second. And also the other navigation lights would have been visible even at a distance, would have noticed some flashing strobes or red lights in it. It was just straight up solid white lights, definitely not satellites, definitely not LED balloons. We know what we're dealing with here. So there's no signs of any direct interaction with the objects and Dave, Adam or Blaise on that particular night. That doesn't mean that there wasn't. So now we're getting to something very relevant, don't we, with the band? And obviously we've got to keep things ticking away, because at the moment it's 10:15, but that's fine. That's okay. We're doing it right. We can go up to about midnight. So okay. So as you can see, we're in 2014 now, so there's only a few more to go over. And then we'll be preparing for the gig by the band, guys. Get yourself ready, perhaps. Get a couple of beers down here. Right, okay, so let's go over here. There were some very interesting experiences happened to do with the early plans for the band. So I'll hand over to Dave to go over some of those experiences with you, because they're very, very interesting. This is the living room thing. And also the sound.
Okay, so I started to, I've always sort of like been a bit involved in music, but I've been involved in a lot of things, do you know what I mean? Not so specifically music more than anything else, but the last couple of years I have grown a love for playing music and writing music, and it just sort of seemed to happen to me. I sort of like turned into a bit of a hippie, and I decided from nowhere that I was capable of playing a guitar and singing and writing music. Now, I don't want to, it's hard to do this before we're about to play, you know what I mean? By the way, we're really good, it's all deep and very spiritual, and you'll love every song. I don't want to build us up. But so I basically started having this idea, and it felt like a deep drive, you know what I mean? That I was going to create this band that was going to spread the message, which sometimes comes across a bit wrong if you just try to say it to people. I've watched other people who are trying to tell people about love and about the way the world is and stuff, and see them come up against a lot of brick walls. And then I thought, if I had 3 chords to my message, no one will notice that I'm talking about infinite love all the time, and they'll all start going, oh, that's really lovely, that is. And we got out there and we've done it a lot. So there's like me, Adam, Pabs and Grant, and we've sort of become our own little Fab Four, and we're going out there every day almost and playing gigs all around the country, but mainly Oxford. What are we up to now, stage ready, 18 songs? Yeah? And I wrote them all, and I've had them come to me in very strange ways. There was once when I woke up in the morning, I'd had a full night's sleep, and everyone went to work and school and stuff, and I was sitting on the sofa, and about 9:30 in the morning, I was conscious enough to sort of go, oh God, I'm feeling really tired, and it's a fairly unusual thing for me to feel like that at that time in the morning after a night's sleep, because I'm not really prone to that. But so I was on the sofa, I went down. Next thing I know, I was waking up again, and I think it was about 11 o'clock, something like that, 11:30 in the morning, and I had a song, which I'm not going to play for you tonight. I'm not doing it. We've got better songs to play for you tonight, but I've played it before, and it was called Love Is Here. And I woke up, I had all the lyrics, all the guitaring, the structure of the song, And it took me as long to write it as it did to take me to write it down, basically on paper. It took me, 5 minutes maybe to write it down on paper, and then I played it, and it was done. And then I went to Adam's and recorded it, and it was done. And it was. Do you remember that, Adam? And we wrote a song in the morning, or that's what happened to me in the morning. I wrote the song, ran over to Adam's, recorded it. It sounded fantastic, didn't it, on the demo? And it's been like one of our hidden little gems, isn't it, ever since? And yet we never play it on stage now because it's so slow and sort of emotive that we're generally like rocking it up a little bit more when we go on stage. It doesn't feel right to play this sort of deeply spiritual, sort of slow emotive song. But yeah, that sort of stuff has been happening to me a lot. And maybe like when we play later, although we'll be playing the sort of funnier, funkier sort of sort of stuff, you're still hearing the lyrics that it's all basically about either aliens, oneness, infinity, infinite love, you name it. If it's got to do with balance and oneness and your true nature, it's in our songs, even if it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Because we've tried to do it with fun. I don't like the idea of, like, I was once told by somebody very clever, said that, if it doesn't make you laugh, it's not true. And when you see a lot of spiritual teachers and that trying to teach things, there's sometimes a heaviness about them because they're trying to tell you, do you know what I mean? You must be free, everybody. You must know that we're all one, and you've got to be like this. And if you don't accept it, you're wrong, and all that kind of stuff. And I really believe it's more dynamic than that. And I believe the truth has got more compassion than that, for untruth, if you like. So we just try to do what we do with a bonhomme, don't we, Adam? An unforced bonhomme. And just try to have fun, because I believe that actually, it's a phrase I've already used tonight on the way up here, actually, when I was talking to Grant, but it is true what Ike said about the truth will set you free, but I believe that first it will piss you off. And you need a lot of sense of humour to get through that. I think the thing that's going to get us home quicker than anything else, and the thing that's going to get us to see the truth quicker than anything else is a really good sense of humour, because I believe that God or love or whatever you want to call it probably has the best sense of humour, the driest sense of humour. I know I've seen some pretty sick shit in the world, and I'm pretty sure God's got a really dry sense of humour, but nevertheless it's a dry sense of humour. And it's not, I don't believe that the universe is against us, and I don't believe that there's an enemy and a line to be drawn between black and white and good and bad and right and wrong, or whatever you want to call it. Of course they are two sides of one coin, and we're all the one coin. That's the truth of the matter. So the war needs to end. For me, that's what my journey is inside, is that the war inside of me ends. The internal conflict stops. The intuitive part of me stops fighting the rational part of me, and I'm both of those things, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I'm a good person, because I'm not a good person. I can tell you I'm not a reptilian. I've got a t-shirt to prove it. But I'm not a good person, I'm not a bad person, I probably am both of those things, and just as all of us are, we all treat different people in our lives differently and reflect different aspects of ourselves at those people. And whoever's a wanker to me, is absolutely a fine person to his own daughter, or his wife or whatever. That's the truth. We all play different roles to different people. So I am all things. I'm a lazy person except when I'm busy, and and I'm a happy person except when I'm sad, and I'm a peaceful person except when I'm violent. That's a whole being. Whole people are dangerous, and yet actually, whole people, I think, are intricate in saving the world, because I think there's a lot of half people walking around half people can be easily lied to. Half people can be manipulated. They can they're searching for something, for the wholeness of themselves, and therefore they're kind of in a place where lost in the dark. And I believe that there probably is a dynamic happening in the world now, where there's definitely something happening. There's definitely a raising consciousness going on in the planet. I mean, the fact that we're still here having this conversation suggests that it's happening. I'm pretty sure that 20 years ago, there wasn't as many people sitting around talking about the nature of consciousness, the nature of reality, the nature of oneness. That truth's always been there. There's always been gurus and mystics that have said, hey, guess what, there's one. But it's only really recently that scientists have started saying it, isn't it? Yeah, so we are entering a new paradigm, and it's only so long I think we can go on for when the scientists are saying, oh look, we've looked into quantum physics, and it turns out we're all one thing, experiencing itself subjectively through an infinite amount of different ways, Bill Higgs said. I mean, Bill Higgs was You know, he's a comedian, but he knew the truth. He said it over and over again in his comedy. You know, that we were all one. That we were all one. Life goes on forever. Death is an illusion. This I've been told almost verbatim by these guys. I won't tell you that they're telling the truth because I can't say that on their behalf. I will tell you that it resonated true with me. Okay, it resonated true with me. I'd been an imbalanced person in the past. When I was a young man, I was so imbalanced, so horrendously imbalanced that I joined the army, and you know, and did all the sort of things that soldiers do in the army. And yet, yeah, it's funny. We live in a sort of funny, backwards kind of society where, when I was going off to do those things for Queen and country, that I was having parties thrown for me by my family to sort of like say what a hero I was, and everyone was rallying around to say what a great guy I was. And when I told everybody that I wanted to be a vegetarian and I wanted to stop hurting people, and that was, you would have thought I'd smacked everyone in the face when I said that. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden I didn't want to run around with an SA-80 anymore. I find it very interesting. For me, it was like a black and white case of me realising that the world was almost perfectly back to front. You know, that I heard a quote once before saying that, like, you know, we're getting to the point where, you know, the hospitals are destroying the health, and the governments are destroying freedoms. You know, schools are destroying education, churches are destroying our connection with God. It's almost completely and utterly back to front, and the beautiful thing about that is that the more obvious it becomes that everything's back to front, I think the more obviously we can turn it around. So hopefully, you know, in some small part, like, you know, I want to be a servant in and give myself over to that process. I know it sounds a bit corny, but I don't want to look at you when I say it, but I really do love you all. You know what I mean? You don't have to say it back. I'm okay. You know, but it's what becomes the truth. It doesn't become some archaic idea where it's just something that you walk around with and go, oh, you know, I love everybody. I've got flowers in my hair, and that's not true, because love is both those things. It's ugly and it's dirty sometimes, and it's hard sometimes, and you have to tell people things they don't want to hear and all stuff. So love is real. Love is a whole thing, and in that very sense, I do love you all. Even if I like is a different thing, sort of thing. You know what I mean? I know some of you better than others, but but the baseline love, the infinite love that me and you both are, we definitely are sharing, and that makes us each other. And therefore, that's why I'll stand up in front of you here, making a bit of a prat of myself for you, in order to expose myself and to help everyone move forward, so that you can gain something from what I'm saying. But I've gone on a bit, Dave. Here you go, mate. Sorry, mate. Is there a soapbox? There's a soapbox there.
Yes. So yes, where do I go from here? Wow, flipping heck. Okay, yeah, that's all right. No, it's very good. It's very interesting. See, I've talked to Dave for hours and hours and hours about his experiences, and I've spoken with him in depth about all the aspects. And that's why, for me, the case is so profound, because it really has kind of opened my eyes to it. You know, Dave's awareness of what's going on with this and how it integrates with the world is absolutely fascinating to listen to. So yeah, I didn't even mention this on the translucent beings. This was something that Adam saw the night before he had the song. Essentially, Adam woke up in the middle of the night and there was some sort of figure, wasn't there? Some sort of.
Just to say, when we were recording, we were putting the audio tracks in and then coming away from it and just coming back the next day. And I kid you not, it was like the music had been mixed overnight. Like the owl was coming in and doing the shoes, do you know what I mean, for the old man and that. That's how the sort of experience went, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, some people may kind of hear that and think that's ridiculous, you know, they come in and mix or something. No, I mean, I was just saying it like it is. It's happened. You know, how do you interpret it? However you interpret that, there's this connection there going on with their music and with the experiences, which I find fascinating. Love is here, as Dave mentioned there. We'll keep things moving because it's almost 10:30. How the night flies by. It does what I thought. Stop it. That's a yellow card, John. Yeah, they also noticed a sort of shadowy figure across the other side of the street. The living room incident was something else that happened with this, where there was a number of them discussing the band in the living room, and all of a sudden there was kind of like this time shift, wasn't there, and everything became really still. Yeah. And there was some sort of being noticed coming up the driveway, and then when they came to the senses, the front door was open. And I've got a quote here actually from this is a quote from at least Dave's daughter. So she too has been directly involved with some of these experiences and discussed. She sent me an audio recording, which is really great to get. As I said, it's affected a lot of his family. And so this is from Elisa's testimony directly. And we were all sat talking, and the gate opened, and there was somebody coming up. Then all of a sudden, it was like I was scared. And then Adam got up, and the front door was open, like not much, but it was like open. I was sat down. I remember being sat down. I think Mum had gone out for drinks. I don't remember if everybody else was sat down. Everyone was going, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of, it's just the wind. And I was really scared. So Adam, I think it was Adam, went over to the door and it was open. So you can see that, so you've been through that experience. She's talking about the weird stillness that occurred, the fact there was somebody on the drive. So, as I said, multiple witnesses and all these experiences are absolutely incredible. We did mention the flying triangle. Do you want to, time's ticking, but do you want to very briefly kind of go over that? Yeah, it is a good time.
So yeah, like this happened with Emma as a friend of ours. We were driving along at night time, and we saw a huge triangle, like a huge triangle, fly over us as we were driving towards Brew Hill again. I mean, like the same, another sort of extension of that same road there. Now, Emma was absolutely like it was. I believe it was the first time she'd seen stuff flying about in the sky, you know, like the odd light or something, and stuff that she could count away and sort of go, oh, you know, I think I saw something the other night, I think I saw something. It's like, okay, it's fine, you'll know when you have. But then I was driving along with her down this road, and a triangle that was like having at least a jumbo 747 fly over the car at 500 foot. That's the kind of like sizes we're talking, like coming over. Proper took her back. It proper like took her breath away, and you know, she was struggling to maintain herself. But then afterwards, as extreme as the experience was, and you would think to yourself, if I saw a triangle tonight driving home, awesome, I'm going to telephone Dave tomorrow, and I will tell him I saw this massive triangle. That's what I saw. I had this crazy experience, and I guarantee loads of you have had this experience, but you just didn't have me sitting next to you to remind you of it. And she was basically having to talk to me continuously because she wanted to forget, and I could see her wanting to forget, even though it was this amazing experience. At first, she was going, "Oh my God, that was amazing! It was amazing! Wow, I've never seen a spaceship before." You know, that's how she was. 5 minutes later, I had to remind her that she saw it. Now, I struggle to relate to that entirely because of how far I've been living with this, or how long I've been living with this. For her, you know, she's a 26-year-old woman, and to watch her go from really excited about it to not remembering that it happened. She remembered once. She just needed some prompting. We just needed to sit there and talk, you know, and just say, "Look, remember the triangle? Remember it came over." She was like, yes, I do. She was consciously aware of what was going on in her head. She could feel her head fighting to want to forget the experience. Now, I guarantee 90% at least of you in here, as let's suggest we're all normal spectrum human beings, that if you had that experience on your own, it would be hit or miss whether you'd remember it in the morning or not, and I don't know why, and there would be personal reasons as to why you did or didn't, but I guarantee you both things are possible. You could have the most bizarre experiences and you'll wake up tomorrow like nothing happened. I've watched it happen to other people. I've had people have experiences with me who the next day do not remember, and it's not worth arguing about because I realise that psychologically it's very threatening to them, and we won't go into it any further. You know, that's how it is. But I've watched it happen, and I'm sure it's happened to a number of people in here.
I'm thinking in the due to the time and the fact that, you know, we do want to get the sort of band set up and play. I'm going to skip past the last few sections. We were briefly going to go to the surveillance and everything. Now, the case is online. It's on the website. It's very, very detailed. It goes into everything we discussed. It goes into everything that we covered in part one. It goes into about twice as many experiences, in fact, that we haven't even included here in the talk. It's that detailed a case. There are some aspects we were going to cover towards possible surveillance going on. But we do need to crack on really with the time. It's kind of got to 10:30, and I think it is time to kind of wrap things up. So guys, I'm going to skip forward to the sort of end of it now, and then obviously any of these other things that I mentioned that we don't have time to go over, do check out the website, okay? And do have a proper read of the case report. And I'm sure David would be happy to discuss them with you as well, okay? Yes, so there's the surveillance there with the shades incident, yeah. I do apologise that we've run out of time. As I said, I mean, originally we were trying to do this all in one night, and here we are running out of time at the end of the second night. And that's just because it just shows how detailed and stunning a case this is. And I've let Dave have some proper time to talk. There's certain parts of the talk, obviously, we kind of went off on a tangent a bit. But it's just fascinating hearing him talk about some of his thoughts on what's going on with this, and I just can't get enough of it. And you can't either, guys. But yeah, to conclude this and wrap things up. It is one of the most impressive cases I've yet investigated, and that's quite a thing because I've investigated about 200 cases now around the world, I reckon. And this is still easily one of the most profound and sort of wide-reaching cases I've looked into. It's forced me to reevaluate my thoughts on some aspects of the contact experience. I've spoken with many contactees over the years, but Dave's really opened up my eyes to a lot of the more deeper aspects of contact, and reminded me that there is many elements to it, not just physical, but on other levels as well. Absolutely incredible. It's very clear, obviously, as you can see, it's clear that David has experienced contact since an early age. And it's affected him, his family and friends in many ways, so it's very much a wide experience. It's not just one individual going through all this, it's everybody around him. Absolutely incredible. Cosmosis has come about as a result of this contact and the result of him meeting his great friends over there who too have had experiences. And again, those experiences are in the report. I'm sure I could sit down with blows and go over their experiences for an entire night with them. So it's interesting these contactees, in their own right, have sort of come together and made friends that I find absolutely fascinating. Some of their lyrics, some of the band's lyrics have come directly from the ETs, as we discussed. And lastly, this story is very much far from over. Obviously, I'll be keeping in touch with the guys from now on until forever because they're great. And through dealing with this case, we've become really good friends as a result of that. Very proud to say, and it's just really great to know them all. It really is. So any new experiences happen, which we deem kind of big enough to go in the report, we'll certainly be adding them. As I said earlier on, we're going to be looking into the implant angle to see whether Dave has any implants in him. That'll be coming up. If you find anything from that, you'll be the first to know. So that's it, guys. Really, there's our group advertising ourselves there in the actual place where it's happening. And this is the Facebook page here for Cosmosis. Cosmosis Band UK. So if you use Facebook, which I hope many of you do, get on there and add the band and see what they're up to and everything. You can find out what gigs are coming up. But the next gig coming up is coming up in about 15 minutes, right here. Yeah. So can you please all give everybody a massive round of applause for Dave Anderson. I hope you found the evening fascinating. Do you want to say anything, sort of final words?
Yeah, music's more interesting than surveillance, so we'll just get on with that. Okay.
There we go. Yeah, absolutely right. Guys, we're going to have about a 15-minute break now, because so while the guys get the stuff set up, and so be sure to go and grab yourself a drink. If you've got any questions, obviously they'll be setting up the band, but yeah, be sure. I'm sure they'll have the answers. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed the talk. Be sure to check out the report, and Cosmosis is coming next.
I really haven't got quite a feel for it. I'm not making excuses. Let's just organ on and stuff, yeah. Right, okay, we're starting. We're Cosmosis.
Hello, everyone!
Yeah!
Please, mate, yeah.
Right.
Let's do that song that was in the intro. Let's play it. This is a song called Tonight, and this song is actually kind of about experiencing like Stockholm syndrome with your alien experiences. So it's like some people, go into fear, and then eventually they start to love the people that initially they thought were traumatizing. But this is a fun song. This is a song about being a human being. It's called Incomplete. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Cause I'll make complete, yeah.
On Your World, let's do that. Yeah, this is a song about, like, it's probably not strictly true, but I kind of like wrote it thinking like this is kind of like what love's message would be to the Illuminati. Are you ready?
Yes.
Jeez, I'm struggling.
You alright?
No. Stevens, because I used to deliver his Friday night free newspaper. That's it. It's not a song about delivering his Friday night newspaper though. It's called Peace Train. Give it some, mate.
Oh yeah, didn't it?
Oh, if you do like what you hear tonight, our manager has a couple of our CDs.
Oh yeah, CDs there, the back guys, by the way, the new single.
You can find us on Facebook as well, Cosmosis Band UK. We've got some funky videos.
Let's try a new
Yeah, Holmes' brand new song, that's spanking brand new.
one man stand. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a song about husky. Yeah. It's better than it sounds.